his planet is slightly out of phase of our reality.
People started taking pictures, and it seemed to be that there were tunnels under the Dome of the Rock.
I myself, as a kid, would see miracles and healings happen, cancerous tumors dissolving.
We won't only become aware of more planets that will come into focus, but we will become more aware of seeing auras.
The government came in, sealed it immediately, and made sure that nobody went down.
And it was actually finding the law of one, where they explained the metaphysics of healing.
And for the first time ever, I started seeing green coming around his head.
According to the document, sacred objects were down there.
I realized it was creating such a powerful frequency and it would happen.
What did I notice about that? I was in an expanded state of awareness.
I believe that's how members of TLS walk in those abilities naturally.
As you can see, the proof is here. Are you going to choose to see it? Welcome back to Hidden Revelations. I'm your host, Jason Shurka, and sitting alongside me is Brandon Bozarth and Aaron Abke. And today we're going to be speaking about the concept of proof. What is proof, and does it really exist? Is there irrefutable proof out there? And the reason why we're bringing this up now is because for the past 6 episodes, we've been speaking about some pretty out there stuff, all the way from extraterrestrial life, how they look, what they are, their level of consciousness, their technology that we've had thousands of years ago, even though we believe that we're at the cutting edge of technology today. There's so much that we've spoken about. And the question is, where is the proof? Is there any indefinite, irrefutable proof that we can bring to the table to prove this once and for all? So I'd like to share a quote that somebody once shared with me. And the quote goes as follows: "For those who believe, no proof is necessary. For those who don't believe, no proof is possible." And a large theme when we speak about the idea of proof is the factor of belief, the factor of faith, and how that connects to indefinite proof to begin with. So let's talk about proof big picture before we head into the pyramid code and the Bashar material and the law of one material. Proof big picture as a concept. Brandon, go for it. Where do you stand with the idea of indefinite proof?
So in the Essassani teachings, and there was actually another channel while Bashar was channeling called Elan, who channeled through Andrew, a guy named Andrew. I'm forgetting his last name. And they were really big on believing is seeing. Seeing isn't believing. And that our belief is the fundamental creator of reality. So much so that if we didn't have belief, we wouldn't have a physical reality. So belief is what sustains, it's like in the Hindu tradition, you have the sustainer, the destroyer, and the creator, right?
Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu.
3 aspects of physical reality. All of that is experienced because of our lens of belief. You could say our personality, you could say our ego. On spirit, there is no belief. It's pure knowing. So in physical reality, what is real to us, what is true to us on this level is going to be a reflection of what we believe. This is the understanding of the Essassani people. Now, that doesn't mean it's invalid, even if what you believe and someone else believes contradict each other. In mainstream, maybe psychology or philosophy, they go, well, that's a fallacy. You can't have 2 opposing conclusions that literally oppose one another in the same space, right? One of them must be wrong. That is a very linear way of thinking. Going, well, if this is right, then this one must be wrong. It cannot coexist, but yet it does. Many spiritual truths exist in this kind of paradox, right? I've even heard channels say, how can you describe existence in one word? And they go, paradox. So paradox is a understanding of multidimensionality. 2 objects can take up the same space and time in different dimensions, from different perspectives, on different vibrational frequencies. Point being, big picture, is that until we can transcend our beliefs, meaning once they become transparent, when we're not clinging on to my belief is the ultimate truth, and this happens through our own spiritual evolution, we'll be able to perceive what is beyond the level of belief. Bashar calls that the realm of knowing. In the realm of knowing, you're finally able to see reality without a filter. You're able, and maybe in A Course in Miracles, they call it Christ vision, right? You have perfect perception. Someone like Christ may have had perfect perception. And from that point of view, there's zero imposing onto reality of your beliefs.
Right.
You're completely seen through the lens of your higher mind, your higher self, so to say. And you're just witnessing the nature of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's informing you. You aren't informing it, in other words. So in Conversations with God, which is another channel text, they talk
Incredible book, by the way.
Incredible book.
Yeah.
They talk about how Neil uses the term, or maybe it was God, uses the term true. What is true? Temporary reality understood existentially. And at one point, it was absolutely true that the earth was flat, and all the science proved it. And in some societies, they go, well, it's true, or it's the right thing for women to cover their skin. And others, they go, it's the right thing. It's true that we should be nude.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, for the most part, when people are referring to truth, they're not referring to what is completely beyond our perception and belief. They're not talking about the underlying nature of reality. They're talking about evidence they're creating as a reflection of their belief.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, I think people might call that, or something similar to that, a confirmation bias. But if we look at where we are at in this level of reality, almost everything is a confirmation bias. There's proof and evidence on every side to infinity. And if we stay on that level of reality, we're just going to keep arguing and arguing and arguing and arguing until we evolve enough to go, wait a second, what is the underlying foundation creating this argument? What is allowing for all of the same, for contradicting points of view to be validated in the same time and space? What is the nature of that? And we'll start to get a deeper understanding of what knowledge is. And Bashar discerns, that makes the difference between truth and knowledge. He says knowledge is what is fundamental. No one made it up.
Yeah.
He goes, we didn't make it up. We discovered it.
Yep.
He goes, you don't even need to believe it. It doesn't matter. Because, and I'll share some of what he considers knowledge on this episode. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not, it's still going to work. Great example is like what you put out is what you get back. There's no opposite to that. It works in a circle. It's like eternity. You can't not put something out. Even if you're going, okay, I'm going to put out, not putting out something. That's what you're putting out. And you're going to get that back. That's one of the 5 laws of creation. So you'll see every single law, you exist. That's one of them. You can experience non-existence because then you would not exist and you wouldn't be able to experience it. So when this band of knowledge is, I think, what we're remembering. And when we remember it, we're putting less weight on evidence and this sort of thing. And we're going to start having a new kind of conversation.
When it comes to proof in general and the idea of whether there is such thing as indefinite proof or not, I always liken it to the idea of awareness. And I want to share a little story to explain what I mean by that. So at this point, probably like 10 months ago, if not a year ago, I was playing chess with my little cousin. And we're both looking at the same board. He's about 10 years old. And he knows the ins and outs of this game. He's very aware of how to play chess. So here I am sitting down, seeing the moves that I see based on what I understand the game of chess to be and my experience with the game of chess. And here's my little cousin at 10 years old. In one move, he checkmates me, and I didn't see that. Now, the fact of the matter is that was right in front of me the whole time. That move to checkmate me was literally right before my eyes the entire time. But because my awareness was not at the level of my little cousin's awareness when it came to the game of chess, he was able to see something and therefore do something that I was not able to do. And the reason why I'm sharing that right now is because big picture in regards to what's going on in the world today, our history and our potential future, just because you don't necessarily see something doesn't mean it's not there. As we expand our level of awareness, as we expand our level of consciousness, we will start being in resonance with different abilities of not just our physical abilities, but also our ability to comprehend and therefore perceive certain things. It will change not just what we see, but the way we see it as well. So there's an excerpt in the Pyramid Code that talks just about this principle in terms of how this applies to our current reality and something having to do with the Zodiac. And the excerpt goes as follows. The Zodiac is an integral part of the Earth and the pyramids. Without the energetic radiance of the Zodiac signs, constellations, the Earth and the pyramids would never survive. The constellations of the Zodiac surround Earth and are fixed in space. The Zodiac constantly emits 12 different energies from its 12 different fixed constellations in the direction of Earth. Within the confines of each of the 12 constellations of the Zodiac exists 12 stars that are not visible to those who are not currently at the awareness of the upper levels of the fifth dimension or higher, aka Gamma. The 12 stars within the confines of each constellation each spin on their own axis. Additionally, the 12 stars within the confines of each constellation all revolve around the center of each constellation as a unit. This means that there are 144 stars within the confines of the constellations in the Zodiac that are not visible to the eye. These stars will only become visible to us when we reach the upper limits of the fifth dimension or higher, aka Gamma. This is a prime example that conveys the lesson that in order to see and comprehend something, we must first be in resonance with it.
Bashar talks about this concept that you can only perceive what you are the vibration of. So if I look at you, Jason, and I perceive or I see in you, I go, oh, Jason's happy. I can only see that in you because I contain happiness. If I look at you, Aaron, I go, oh, you're upset. Then you're mirroring to me a vibration that is active and existing and being expressed within me. Mm-hmm. So I could see in you, I can see in the universe what I contain. Now, we are fractals of all that is, so we contain it all, but we are not always expressing it all. So Bashar explains that his planet is slightly out of phase of our reality because we are not on the same vibrational, wavelength as their planet. As we expand our consciousness, Gamma, we won't only become aware of more planets that will come into focus because we're literally shifting dimensions, but we will become more aware of even phenomenon of light, like seeing auras. I remember this time I was in a SRF, Self-Realization Fellowship. And I'm sitting there, and this was right when I met my girlfriend, and I was just feeling so much love, like overwhelmed with love. I'm just glowing, and I'm sitting next to her, and I'm watching this guy give like a service, right? And I'm sitting there, and for the first time ever, I started seeing, like I would see the lights in this room of green coming around his head, like this. Solid, like I couldn't see through it really. It was only hardly transparent. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was like, whoa. And I'd see it emerge. And then if I looked up, my eyes would create it as I was looking at it. So I'd look above his head and it, boom, it'd be there. I'd look to the left and it'd go, whoo, whoo, and it was following my eyes. And I'm just sitting there doing this little, and Ashley's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm seeing something, That's my lived experience. What did I notice about that moment? I was in an expanded state of awareness, absolute love, absolute unity. Maybe it was Gamma, maybe it was Theta. It definitely wasn't Beta. I definitely had no stress at all in my body. And I was able to perceive a light that was probably already there. Mm-hmm. Because again, one of the laws, maybe this is a good time to just name the laws. The laws that Bashar talks about is everything exists. Like you exist, but that also means existence exists, and it is infinite. It is all that is. It is never born. It can never die. So what you're seeing is it's already there. It's not like something new can be created. Mm-hmm. Something new can come into our awareness. That's the difference. So in the same way that the 5 laws are something that we will, as a society, understand, we have to be on the vibration of that level of understanding first in order to then have that understanding.
Otherwise, it'll seem like nonsense.
It'll seem like nonsense, right? So the 5 laws are as follows. Number 1, you exist. That's synonymous with existence exists. That's also synonymous with existence is what exists. Yeah, I am. It's synonymous. The way this really landed for me is all the next four are in a sense just an extension of that first one. The second being the all is one, the one is all. So everything that does exist is part of one thing.
The law of one.
The law of one. The third is what you put out is what you get back. Law of attraction 101. The fourth is everything is here and now. So everything that does exist throughout time and space, that is one thing, all exists here and now. And if it's infinite, then everything exists here and now. It's just in different dimensions, different on different frequency bands of awareness. And the final law is everything changes but the laws. So the old Zen saying, you can't step into the same river twice, speaks to that. Everything changes but the laws. So that creates a structure. He's explained it before, kind of like a toroidal field of how these laws are fundamental to everything, and everything changes as an expression of those finite, so to say, laws that create that infinite changing expression of the finite laws. And it's this beautiful, structure. He essentially said, in order to have infinity and for it to be intelligent in a sense and have synchronicity and whatnot, there needs to be a structure to it. The structure, you could say it's finite in structure, but it is what allows for the infinite to be infinitely experienced and ever changing.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're touching on is these 5 laws are things that we have to be, maybe a better word is convicted of.
Yes.
To integrate them into our awareness.
Yes.
In the ancient Vedas and sutras, they talk about self-realization happens through conviction that I am that. And this is, in my own practice, something I've noticed is that so often we wait for the mind we think we're waiting for the mind to change its point of view and start to believe it. And once the mind and the body feel like it's true, then I can start to believe that it might be true. And it actually works the opposite way, right? You have to know it's true and begin to build conviction that it's true, and the mind will fight you on it and will try to hang on to its old paradigm. And I spoke about the example of when I learned how to put quarters and nickels and pennies onto the wall. At a certain point, I didn't even care that it was falling anymore. My mind would say, this is so stupid. What are you doing? Thinking you can stick this penny to this wall. It's been 100 times it hasn't landed yet or hasn't stuck yet. What are you waiting for? You're insane. And if I just sort of got into a meditative state with it, that part of my mind would drop out, that sort of beta state. And I would just start to zone in on the penny itself. And then I could convince myself I know it's possible. It's going to stick. It's going to stick. And it would be at that transition, once my working mind stopped narrating the experience and I was just only in that conviction, that it would start to stick. And so this is where I think we get into belief as conviction is the big distinction that we know it. We have to know it's true first before the mind will see it. Like you said, I only ever see my own state of being. That's what I'm always projecting. So this is why in all Eastern traditions, they call it the don't know mind. It's the highest state of awareness you can have, because in that state of awareness, you're not projecting, overlaying onto reality and saying, this is what I think you are, reality. But when you say, I actually don't know what reality is, I can't know what reality is, I can't know what infinity is, then you're saying, reality, I'm going to let you tell me what you are.
Right.
And that's where these levels of awareness and these abilities we've been talking about during this whole series become possible.
Yeah.
And so it all begins with first strengthen my conviction that it's true. Don't wait for my mind to believe it.
Right.
But me as awareness, as consciousness, has to be convicted of it first.
And I think what's so important about that is things like gravity, the law of gravity, right? That's really not debated anymore. Law of gravity, does it exist or not? It's like, yeah, it exists.
It is debated. Nassim Haramein, Nassim Haramein.
Of course.
Yeah, talks a lot about the strong force, the weak force, and something else that I don't remember off the top of my head. But there's this whole thing of their calculations, according to him and a few other physicists, are not exactly what we thought they were.
Right.
And nobody actually knows what gravity is. So let me change what I said. The law of gravity is correct. The formulas of gravity is what's debated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
We know that gravity must be some kind of phenomenon of electromagnetic energy that we don't understand yet, because everything is just energy.
Right.
So it has to be there, but we just can't figure it out because we think we're so bound by our Newtonian physics.
Right.
Model.
Exactly. And that's the point that I was making, is that Bashar would say, gravity on your level of reality is an agreement that's part of the physical reality game. It's not universal on every level of existence in the way that it is expressed in physical reality. So to look at things in the physical phenomenon, like Newton's laws of motion and Newtonian physics and whatnot, you're finding what's true for the reality that you're in, but that's very different than universal knowledge that is true on every level. And I even think A Course in Miracles defines knowledge as it's universal, it's on every level, it's true on every level, and there are no opposites to them. Mm-hmm. And if you look at those 5 laws, there's no opposites to everything's here and now. Mm-hmm. Who has ever experienced being then?
There's no duality in the laws.
Right, exactly. Right. So the point being, why is that important is when we're trying to create a model of the world, first of all, if the world or the universe is limited to the physical universe, then we're going to only find laws that create evidence that we only live in a physical universe. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to see any deeper than that. Well, what does that perpetuate for the most part? Materialism. The idea, I'm trying to think of the actual name of it. It might even be materialism, where matter is believed to be primary. Mm-hmm. Is that materialism? Mm. Or it's not materialism, it's called...
not reductionism.
It's a form of that, essentially.
Yeah, materialistic science.
Yeah, where matter is fundamental, and then out of matter came mind, and then out of mind came consciousness, versus the other way around.
Right.
There's consciousness. It has a nature and a structure to it. Say it's these 5 laws. And from that came these minds, these little points of view of consciousness. And then those points of view created body and matter and so forth. So it's a fundamental difference. One of them is built in a united understanding that says, well, everything physical is going to be our own creation, our own reflection. That's not going to really tell us the truth really about anything. Mm-hmm. And the other one says, no, the physical reality is the source of all, and that's going to tell us the truth about everything. And because of how the physics is set up in physical reality, you're going to just keep finding conflicting evidence if you stay on that surface level.
I mean, just on a basic level, how could it be from matter to consciousness? Because from matter to get to mind, there would have had to be some form of awareness for that existence to exist in the first place. That's just my 2 cents on it. But I wanted to bring it back to what you said, Aaron, in regards to the don't know mind being a very high state of awareness that you could be in. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember where I heard who said this quote, but it's one that just touched my heart a while ago. And it says, to know means to limit all other possibilities.
Right. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. When you know something absolutely, certainty is there, curiosity disappears, and that's it. But there's a whole other side to that of, well, people can say, well, practically speaking, there are things that we know. And if you're always in the don't know mind, can you explain more of how that can actually be implemented in a very practical way without losing yourself?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a confusing topic because it can give the idea that if I know that I drop this pen, it will fall because of gravity. You say, well, how am I supposed to not know that? Mm-hmm. You know, it's always been that way, and I don't think it's ever going to not be that way. What it's really pointing to is that the universe being infinite, being fractal in nature, there's infinite points of view you can have about any one thing. So if I think I know what gravity is, then I'm going to be limited in my understanding that it can maybe help us discover what gravity is one day. Meaning I'm holding everything loosely and I'm allowing my perspectives to shift and change based on the way reality would lead me to a true discovery. So, you know, a point of view is designed to reinforce itself. Maybe if we think of like a circle, any point you take on a circle or a sphere rather, is just one point of view of that sphere, and they're all equally valid, but it's a limitation upon the whole. And so, you know, truthfully, to have any point of view, if I'm looking from this side of the sphere, I can't see the point of view from the other side of the sphere. So I've limited my awareness. The only way I could actually know the whole sphere is to be at the center of the sphere, right? And that would represent unconditional love or unity. That would represent the don't know mind. It's a relaxing of taking up a particular position.
Right, because it's open. It's like, I don't know means I'm open to all.
I'm open to anything, yeah. And all of a sudden, I maybe I know that gravity exists, but I don't know what gravity is. And I stay there. And all of a sudden, new insights, because consciousness will never violate your current level of belief or understanding. So if you say, I think it's this way, the universe basically says, that's fine. You can have that perception as long as you want. And until the universe sees you drop that position and surrender it and say, I actually don't know, then the universe, higher intelligence, will say, okay, now you're open to another angle we can show you. And the dots can begin to get connected. This is the way that people like Tesla, Edgar Cayce, people that have done phenomenal things, made phenomenal breakthroughs in science, particularly in metaphysics, have done so. It's because they didn't approach the study like a materialistic scientist who says, well, we know it works this way for certain, so let's only approach from this angle and just try these experiments over and over again. But to allow yourself to get creative and take in more possibilities, that's the way to know the universe. Like we said before, it has to be done by allowing reality to tell us what it is. And that allowing it to tell us is what we call the don't know mind.
I love it.
If you're thinking at all like I was thinking, well, then is science just a confirmation bias, a way to manifest evidence of our own beliefs? The answer I would give is a yes and. A yes and. A yes in the sense that if you believe, I'll just use the vaccine as an example, that the vaccine is an incredibly healthy and valuable way to combat this virus, then that belief that that's true becomes your personal belief. It becomes your identity. So from that place, you go, okay, now I'm going to attract and see what I'm the vibration of, which is I'm going to see evidence and proof that that is true. So I'm now creating my personal universe, which is all we all have, our own experience, where the truth, I made something that I consider the truth, my truth. And because I'm seeing proof of it in the world, I consider it the truth. But what's actually happening is I'm just creating validation for my beliefs. And people can coexist, like the Vesica Pisces, and both create evidence for their personal truths and claim they are the truth because they don't fully understand the knowledge that allows for such an experience to exist.
So where do we differentiate from the subjective truth to the objective truth?
So as Bashar would say, is the only truth about reality, the only objective truth about reality is that it is subjective, with the exception of the 5 laws. The 5 laws are the structure of the reality that allow for it to be an infinitely subjective experience. And that infinite subjectivity is what is objective of reality.
Understood.
So when you start to understand that, you go, it's kind of pointless for me to argue you and convince you because, and when you really look at it, at least what Bashar would say is, my beliefs are going to create a certain resonance. That resonance is going to reflect back to me, not just the world, but the entire universe or multiverse that I'm in. So each of us are at the center, he says, literally, of the universe. It's like your parents at one point were like, you just think you're the center of the universe? It's like, actually, that's kind of been proven to be true. But we all are equally.
Yes.
And so you're projecting the entire universe from your point of view. I'm projecting you from my point of view. And so what really matters is, am I creating the universe that I prefer? Is my belief system allowing for a universe based in unity, equality, joy, passion, forgiveness, compassion, or not? And that will be a more, I would say, intuitive, but also fulfilling way to relate to truth. Is this truth allowing me to live an empowered life, to feel more connected, to feel, you will start tapping into true knowledge if that becomes your guidance system.
Yeah.
How would you say we surpass the limitation of, the whole proof discussion when it comes to, we could start on one side of the spectrum with extraterrestrial life. There could be pictures, there could be videos. People say it's CGI. You You could start with another example on that side of the spectrum, levitation. A man can do it in front of thousands, if not millions. He's a magician. That was an illusion. And then you can go all the way to literal raw data that's happening in today's day with the whole vaccine adverse reaction events that are happening around the world. You see the data right before our eyes, and yet there are millions and billions that say, no, that's not true, even though the data is there. So on all sides of the spectrum, there's this line that people choose not to pass by saying, no, it's not true, and here's why it's not true. Mm-hmm. And that could come from cognitive dissonance. That could come from choosing not to believe something because of cognitive dissonance.
Right.
How would you guys say we pass that line, if there's a practical way to go about that?
Yeah. Well, I think there's just a lot to be learned right now in the world, in this polarization we're seeing, in that we're living side by side with people who are in a completely different universe from me.
Yeah, quite literally.
A totally different reality. And like you said, when I want to be right about something, that is my message to the universe, that I want to have this particular experience of reality. And the universe will always honor that because it's a free will universe. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to have a different experience until I surrender the one that I currently want to have, which is that I need to be right about this. Mm-hmm. Ego always has to find evidence to validate its identities. So like you said, if someone believes something, they're only going to see that evidence, and all other evidence that contradicts that belief or identity they will not be able to take it in. Mm-hmm. Their mind will come up with some excuse why it's not true, and they'll dismiss it. And that's because in their version of reality, that doesn't match. It's a puzzle piece that doesn't fit. Right. And so we can see this really well in Albert Einstein, when he came up with relativity. That was a huge breakthrough because Newtonian physics said a lot of things relativity was describing were impossible. Right. Even like Mercury's orbit, the way that light moves around the sun, and objects with lots of mass can actually bend light into them. These things seem to defy the laws, which we thought were static and immovable, of Newtonian physics. And then the same thing happened to Albert Einstein when quantum physics came around. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was Niels Bohr who Albert Einstein had those spats with, those famous exchanges with, is like before Twitter, where he says to him, Albert says to Brahm, I don't believe God plays dice. God doesn't roll the dice. That's why I don't believe in quantum mechanics. And he responds with, stop telling God what to do. Meaning you don't know. Stop thinking you know. It's an insult to the nature of infinity to think that you know how infinity works. It turns out infinity, it's actually very difficult to have an experience in infinity because everything's possible. Yeah. So yes, there are parameters that higher intelligence had to set up for this physical universe, the laws of nature, to give us an experience. Like imagine if we didn't have time and I was experiencing even 2 points of view at once. If I'm experiencing 5 minutes from now, reaching into the cupboard, grabbing a cup while I'm sitting here with you, and it's like superimposed, it'd be so disorienting. Like I couldn't have an experience that way. So we need to have this, linear model in some ways with rule sets in place.
At least for where we are now.
Right. At this level of awareness. Yeah. But the point is that there's infinite layers to reality where different laws apply at every level. So if we think we know, we're going to be bound more and more to this one level of understanding. So even an equation like E equals MC squared, we say, well, that's true. From this level of, this density of understanding, it's true. But if I keep it open, then all of a sudden E equals MC squared can lead me to a more multidimensional understanding of that equation, how it applies in other levels of reality or what it says about reality. So much more information can be delivered to me just by relaxing that need to know.
Yes, that's so profound and powerful. And I think it was, or maybe I first heard this from Rupert Spira. He said, and maybe even from you, you can't separate experience from reality. They're two sides of the same coin. So when people go, okay, well, is reality separate from experience? Meaning I want to observe reality.
Reality being objective, experience being subjective.
Exactly. So I want to just see the objective reality, not my experience of it, not my subjective version of it. I just want to see reality.
As it is.
As it is. Yeah. Outside of experience. And then you ask yourself, it's like, when has anyone experienced something they haven't experienced? So it's like, okay, I can experience something. I'm aware of something. And that is what is allowing that reality to exist and be experienced as it is. From Bashar's perspective, the one, all that is always experiencing or aware of everything. So the question of if I'm not in the forest and the tree falls over, did it actually fall? In my universe, the answer may be no. At least it's not in my experience. That's all we have. What experience is more real than another? My dream experience, is that not real? Is the physical one more real?
That always bothered me.
They're just experiences.
Yeah.
They're both equally real experiences.
Correct.
So did the tree fall or not? It's like, well, on some level somewhere that was observed by something, whether it was a plant or an animal, or it was all that is itself. So it's a this and that. You know, it might not be experienced in your reality, but on a higher level, it is in some reality being experienced because reality is infinite. So again, we keep coming back to this multidimensional perspective, this and that paradox. And that is so hard for people to make sense of going, wait, how can there be undeniable evidence of this and undeniable evidence of that? And we need to start asking new questions of, okay, if they are both true, meaning if I believe them, I'm going to be living in a universe based off of that belief, which is going to determine the distance and direction of my life, how I interact with people, what it's going to control my experience, so to say. And all I have is my experience. So you have to ask the question of, what do I want to be true for me, so to say? What if believing, and it doesn't mean we deny certain things like, science shows if you go into fire, you're going to die. Well, don't do that, but what Bashar would say is if you absolutely believe, like without a doubt, full conviction, and not just that, and it's relevant for you, like we've said before, with the theme that you've chose to explore on higher levels, for you to stand in the fire and not be burned, that can happen.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And it has happened.
But
many times.
You go, how many, is that relevant for everyone to do? Do a lot of people right now have the capacity to experience that? No. So
if you want it to be a party trick, it may not work.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's where majority of people are
I
at.
want to call an ambulance in advance.
Yeah, exactly. So it takes discernment, but I'll throw this back to you, Jason, but in this conversation of vax and anti-vax, it's about looking at the underlying energy tone of whatever conclusions you want to draw. And at least what Bashar would say, and what I totally agree with, is if what you believe in allows you to be more loving, more unified, more yourself, be in harmony with the natural world, then why not believe it? Even if it's total BS. You take the weight off of, I absolutely need to know if this is the undeniable evidence. And you go, wait a second, what does it do to your experience by believing that?
Does it serve you? Is it productive?
Is it productive? Right?
And BS from what perspective?
Right. Yeah.
So I'd like to bring in one experience of something that actually happened just a few days after the publication of the Pyramid Code document. That, of course, isn't indefinite proof, but there is a major synchronicity. I don't believe in coincidences. I think everything happens absolutely perfectly. So in the Pyramid Code, it talks about certain objects being buried under the Dome of the Rock. And it talks about this whole room under the Dome of the Rock, about 180 feet below the foundation stone, and certain things that are buried there and so on and so forth. And just a few days after the Pyramid Code document was published, suddenly the news comes out that right where that mosque is of the Dome of the Rock, that big Muslim shrine in Jerusalem, there was, on what seemed to be a floor that was paved with stone, a major, not too big, maybe like this by this, couple feet, maybe a foot and a half, a stone that fell out of the ground and just fell. And suddenly they saw that there was no ground under the stone. People started taking videos and pictures, and it seemed to be that there were tunnels under the Dome of the Rock. And right after that news came out, the government came in, sealed it immediately, and just made sure that nobody knew about it. Nobody went down there. Now, of course, that's not indefinite proof, but you tell me if you think it's a coincidence that right after this document, highly connected to TLS in regards to where it's coming from and the information, the knowledge, telling you that there's something under the dome of the rock. A few days later, a stone falls out of what seems to be a floor.
Wow.
That ends up being tunnels underground, and the government comes and seals it immediately, with us knowing, according to the document, the sacred objects that are down there and the great potential that they have for humanity if they were revealed.
Wow. It reminds me of this story with Bashar. That was one of the most magical and mystical experience I've ever had in my life. So Bashar says, we can't prove to you at this time that we exist indefinitely, because being around you would overwhelm your energetic system, that you could go into a psychic shock. And we won't do that until you're ready. Their ships have been shown. They have triangle craft. So I'm at a Bashar event and I'm watching the channeling, and Bashar leaves and Daryl comes back into the room and sends us on a break, and he's taking off his microphone, and all of a sudden you hear over the speakers like a boo, boo, and then a heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. Just fade out like that. And everyone was like, that must have been his thing dangling, and who knows. And we're all stunned because the energy in the room was just like everyone froze. And it was a perfect heartbeat. It was in a perfect heartbeat. So we're sitting there waiting for something, and you hear the sound people go, we don't know how that's happening. All of the sound equipment is off. It was off the entire time. As soon as he's done, we turn it off. It's been off. And they are freaking out. They're like disoriented. And we're going, what the heck was that? So we come back. Daryl gets into the channeling state. Bashar comes through and right away goes, in typical Bashar fashion, something like, now you see that we are closer to you than you think, and that we share, us and you, the same heart, or the same one heartbeat, or something like that.
Incredible.
So you look at that and you go, well, is it proof? Well, when you have the synchronicity like this, and you experience it for yourself, there's just a conviction that happens. And to me, learning to honor that is what we're learning as a more immature species.
Incredible.
I grew up in an evangelical church as a pastor's kid, and our church was what you would call spirit-filled, in that we operated in, psychic abilities and consciousness that we called spiritual powers, or signs and wonders, miracles. And because we had a religious point of view about what we were seeing, it was completely normal to me to see the supernatural. We had healing revival services all the time. We would have people manifest demons in services where the vibration in worship services would get so intense that people that had entities in them would start manifesting and screaming, and we'd have to take them to the back, and my parents and the pastors would rebuke the demons out of them and stuff.
What would they say?
All of
be gone.
Oh yeah, they would scream and yell and get angry and in Jesus' name, and none of it ever worked. Yeah. But all those experiences seem to confirm my religious beliefs that Christianity is true. It's the one right religion. I myself, as a kid, would lay hands on people all the time and see miracles and healings happen. Eyesight being healed, legs that were too short growing out, cancerous tumors dissolving. We saw deafness, blindness healed. Wow. So at a certain point when I was 23, I began questioning my religious beliefs. And this is a perfect example of how you have to be convicted of what's true before your mind will see it. Because I knew that I didn't believe in biblical inerrancy, the belief in hell. God sends people to hell if they don't confess Jesus, the rapture, and all this stuff. But all these experiences I had as a kid, and all the miracles I saw, and in Jesus' name be healed, and they'd be healed, I had so much evidence that was true that confirmed my bias at that point. It was like, man, how do I get past this? So I just had to surrender that and say, I don't know how that stuff happened. It seemed like it happened in Jesus' name, according to the rules of the Bible and all this, but I don't know. And it was actually finding the Law of One years later and reading it, where they explain the metaphysics of healing. They explain the metaphysics of demonic possession, thought form entities, and how we actually rebuke or cast out negative entities, it's not by screaming at them and all this stuff, but by sending them love and light. And that actually depolarizes negative energy. So they have to get out of there. And we were doing it all wrong in Christianity. And all of a sudden, I'm reading these things from the Law of One that explained everything, all those phenomenons I saw in church from a totally different point of view, from a metaphysical point of view. And I went, oh, that's how healing happens. That's how demonic possession happens. And all these other miracles we saw in consciousness, I realized, oh, it was because all of us were getting into this collective hive mind and creating such a powerful frequency in worship of the Creator. Yes, we believed in these things, that cancer could be healed and blind eyes could be opened, and it would happen. And I believe that's how people like Christ and members of TLS who can do these things, how they walk in those abilities naturally, because I don't think Christ ever saw a sick or diseased person. I think he saw a healed whole person that was believing they were sick, and he was able to command that perception or awareness to change. Right. And in his energy, they were able to integrate that level of awareness and match that frequency. Wow. So it's like, unless I was open to being wrong about how I perceived those miracles my whole life, I might have stayed in that religious belief because they seemed to confirm something at a certain point. And so, like you said, we see that in the world today, this cognitive bias about like, well, I want it to be true, so it is true, because all the evidence I'm seeing points to that. And that's just not the way that you know reality.
Yeah. So as you can see, the proof is here. We have all the proof we need. The question is, are you going to choose to see it? In the next and last episode of Hidden Revelations, we're going to be speaking all about the New Age and false light. We're going to be expanding on how we are moving into a New Age while dissolving all the New Age myths that are stopping us from getting there. Not by throwing us further from religion, but actually showing us how when we dissolve the terminology that we've been taught to use through our many different religions, not only are we all saying the same thing, but we all say that we are approaching a new age. Some call it the Messiah. Some call it the second coming of Jesus. Some call it bliss and nirvana. The fact is, we all say the same thing differently. And in the next episode, we're going to show just how that is and just how we all are going to reach this new age together as one, as a united collective of the human race and life as a whole in the universe. My name is Jason Shurka, and this is Hidden Revelations. Many sources, one truth. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching this video. There's so much more I'd like to dive into, but unfortunately, we can't do that here thanks to the heavy censorship efforts from big tech. If you want to explore this topic further, you can dive deep by accessing our entire uncensored library on unified.tv. There's a link in the description below this video if you want to check it out. A membership to Unified TV gives you unlimited access to hundreds of uncensored podcasts, investigative journalism, documentaries, films, and content that was once available on major streaming platforms like Netflix, but is now banned from the internet. For just $14.99 a month, which is less than $1 a day, you get access to it all. Your subscription also helps keep the platform running free from censorship and corporate influence. Please consider supporting us and enjoy all of our unfiltered and thought-provoking content in return. Thank you very much, and I will see you on Unified TV.